What is going on, FA Nation? My name is Justin Fensterman, along with John and Pemba, and with 6 games on that DFS NBA slate for your Wednesday night, it's time to dominate, time to talk about these matchups here on FantasyAlarm.com. J.I., how you doing, man?
Fantasy, I'm doing pretty good. Regular season quickly winding down. It felt like the season flew by. I know it was shortened, obviously, and they crammed in a lot of games in a short amount of time, but pretty weird to think that the regular season ends on Sunday.
Yeah, it really does. And by the way, that Sunday is going to have 15 games on it. So we'll have all the coverage as we do all the time on fantasyalarm.com, all of our NBA content from our NBA team. Let's go over the injuries because you would think with the amount of injuries there are heading into tonight's slate, you would think it's an 11-game slate. But nope, with these 6 games, James Harden, as of right now, this moment, plans on playing. His teammate, Kyrie Irving, just ruled out, though. So no Kyrie. Kevin Durant, as we know right now, is in. And James Harden plans on playing. So we'll talk about that in a second. Anthony Davis, dealing with that groin, just ruled out. LeBron James thought he could return tonight. Nope. He tweeted out earlier that he is not ready to return. So no AD, no LeBron. Donovan Mitchell still out. We also have Bradley Beal. He's out for at least one more game. Zion Williamson done for the year. Same with Jaylen Brown. Brandon Ingram is out. Kevin Porter Jr. is out. Darius Garland is still out. Lonzo Ball is out. Kemba Walker as well. Mike Conley, Dennis Schroeder, Marcus Smart, Robert Williams, Larry Nance Jr., Joe Harris, Steven Adams, DeAndre Hunter, Sterling Brown, Isaiah Hartenstein. And then we have from the questionable area, Kristaps Porzingis, Christian Wood, Chetty Osman, game time decision, Alex Caruso, Daquan Jeffries, and Daniel House Jr. all listed as questionable. J.I., did I miss anything? Because things have been breaking right and left.
I mean, not as of yet, but there's still plenty of time. The news will come down as we get things going here. So we'll be on the lookout. Of course, Fantasy ready to update everybody as news breaks throughout the live stream.
Yep, we'll give you this note that just came out. The Wizards started. Neto's going to be in that starting lineup for Beal, along with Westbrook, Garrison Matthews, Rui Hachimura, and everyone's favorite Maryland Terrapin, Alex Len, is going to be in that starting lineup tonight, J.I. So let's start, man, with Mr. Westbrook going up against Mr. Young. I think both of them are awesome. I put Trey, especially with that price point that he has, in the starting 5 for that reason. Can you go wrong with either player?
Probably not go wrong. Just one, because of the value you're getting with Trae Young, especially on FanDuel at $8,500. I mean, listen, we generally set the baseline of production that we're looking for, being at 5X. You look at the $8,500 price tag there. He's only going to need, 44, 45 fantasy points to get you there. He's gone for 50 in back-to-back games. So, it's a good number there for Trey, but how do you go against Russell Westbrook? Yeah, you have no option. You literally have to put him in your lineup. This is a guy that is averaging. We just saw a tweet come out like 23, 14, and 15 over the last 10 games. Averaging a triple-double of 23, 14, and 15 is absurd. He's topped 80 DraftKings points in 4 or 5 games. He's averaged over 78 over his last 6. I mean, yeah, he's just got to be in your lineup regardless. If you don't play him, and he goes for 80 fantasy points tonight, you lose. Yep. There's enough value on the slate to fit him in your lineup. If you're fading him, you're hoping he's getting hurt or ejected or something, because he's going to give you that 70 fantasy points. There's just no way around it in this great matchup against Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, look, we know the price point is daunting. 12-6, 12-4, but it's a short slate. And like John and Pemba kind of did his best Warner Wolf impression, if he goes for 80 and you don't have him, you lose. So we don't want that now, do we? Let's talk about some other options besides that matchup here. We once again looking at Luka Doncic going up against whoever, whatever, from the Pelicans for whoever they have to offer tonight.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what it is, right? If you're looking to pivot, Luka, of course, is always in the conversation because he has a similar skill set to what we've seen at Westbrook. He can go for the triple doubles, and this is a matchup against the Pelicans, who are down to their 4th point guard, essentially, at this point, right? Like, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Kyra Lewis are going to be the guys there. So, yeah, he went for 80 DraftKings points already against the Pelicans once this year. If you need to save a little bit of money, then sure, go ahead and go to Luka. I just feel like you're sort of like hamstringing yourself a little bit by fading Westbrook and hoping that Luka has a ceiling game essentially, because right now the average for Westbrook is 70 fantasy points, and you're hoping that Luka's ceiling will be 70 for tonight. So it's just a tough pull for me. I get it if you need to save the $2,000 and you want similar upside, that's fine. But just run West, just make it work.
Yep. We'll make it work. And hey, if you do want to make that work, here's your complimentary piece on FanDuel. And he goes by the name of Payton Pritchard. And this is someone that is expected, according to our numbers, to have very high ownership numbers, 35, 31 respectively. And with that, John, what can you tell us? What are your expectations for Payton Pritchard going up against the non-threatening Cleveland Cavaliers?
I mean, this is just sort of a thing of opportunity, right? Like, there's no Kemba Walker, no Marcus Smart here. He should start at point guard tonight. And while I understand that, they still have, Evan Fournier and Jayson Tatum playing as well as they've been over the last, 5 or 6 games here. We've seen Pritchard, when given the increased opportunity, the increased playing time, be productive. And, he had a game earlier this month where he scored 28 actual points against the Thunder. So, he has that scoring upside. I think he sees, 25 to 30 minutes tonight. They're going to give him an extended leash here. He knows he can score the basketball. So you look at double-digit points, maybe 5 or 6 assists, some rebounds, and kind of set your baseline with him there.
Yeah, I mean, let's shift over and let's talk about this team, because I put these two guys in my starting 5 who that you can look at. I mean, shooting guard, Jordan Clarkson, who literally the other night, J.I., we were on.
We were live.
Covering it. And all of a sudden, a game that was double digits between the Western Conference powerhouses, the Jazz and the Suns, all of a sudden, Jordan Clarkson by himself is bringing the Jazz all the way back. So even with no Mitchell, no Conley, I mean, all systems to go for him. I love his price point. And then you just mentioned it, Evan Fournier, 5,500 on DraftKings, man. Doesn't get much better than that.
No, Fournier isn't looking really good. He mentioned, a few weeks back he was still dealing with some post-COVID issues there, but, he looks like he's over them. He's averaging over 20 points a game now for the last 4 or 5, really filling in for Jaylen Brown. And then tonight, there's not going to be Kemba Walker there to take a lot of shots either. So the offensive focus should really be on him and Tatum, which I know we're going to get to, in a really good matchup here against Cleveland. So love that price tag, like you said. I mean, he only needs 30 fantasy points for 6x. I mean, at that price, he's been exceeding 30 fantasy points the last handful of matchups, games that the Celtics have played. So, yeah, Fournier for me is a core option.
Let's talk about Houston for a second, because now we know some of the LA guys are not going to be playing, especially their 2 big guns. So Houston in general, and you could include some of the other positions. We still don't know what the deal is with Christian Wood, and we thought Kelly Olynyk was going to have a very tough matchup. Maybe not as tough now. Who do you like from this Rockets team? Who do you put that trust in, especially from the value side? Is it Armani Brooks? Is it Kyrie Thomas, who we've seen play a lot of minutes? Who do you look to?
Yeah, it might be Kyrie Thomas, just because of sort of, again, the recent sort of production out of him. And, it's always tough to look at some of these names and be like, am I really putting him in my lineup as you click the button, right? Because you're not used to it.
That's what I said when I was putting freaking Evan Fournier in my starting 5.
But at least Fournier has been like a really good player, this year for the most part. But Kyrie Thomas was a nobody until the last 3 games, where he's giving you 30, 52, and 31 DraftKings points. So, yeah, you got to kind of run with him. He's the hot hand. He's filling up the stat sheet. He had a total 7 combined blocks and steals the other day against Utah. If you're playing on FanDuel, that's 21 fantasy points just in blocks and steals alone. He also scored 27 points in that game. So the fact that he's flashing some of that defensive numbers, he didn't have any blocks or steals against Portland, but the 2 games prior, he had 3 and 1. So, a guy's giving you defensive numbers. He's giving you double-digit scoring. He's rebounding. He's giving you assists. So, the fact that he's filling out the stat sheet, I think you kind of have to put him in your lineup. $4,500 on FanDuel is a free play for me, I think, in this matchup. $5,600 over on DraftKings. Sure, maybe a different conversation can be had, but there's so few options there with Houston that it feels like a guy that you're going to put in your lineup.
Bro, I was looking at DJ Augustine before. Somebody's got to take some shots.
Augustine had a really good game the other day too. I think he had like 18 actual or something like that. So, I don't hate it. Again, like you mentioned, they need players to score. They need guys to get on the floor. They're hurting bad. He had 21 points the other day against Portland. He had 17 actual against Milwaukee the 2 games prior. So the last 2 games where he's played at least 20 minutes, he's gone for 21 and 17 actual. So yeah, listen, another guy that I'm going to buy in if you've seen the minutes. He's getting the increased role. So I don't hate it. It needs under $4,000 on both sides. So yeah, another good value. Again, there's so few players on Houston that are viable that you just kind of run them out there and hope they hit.
Yeah, we got other guys that are questionable, like we mentioned. House is questionable. Jeffries is questionable. Wood is questionable. So it's a lot. Let's move on to the threes here because I think our decision is made where we're going, considering we just talked about a bunch of players sub 5K. I mean, Kevin Durant against the Spurs, no Kyrie Irving, even with James Harden expected to play. Yeah. I'm willing to pay sub 10K on DraftKings.
Yeah, listen, I think James Harden. I think James Harden coming back isn't going to have an impact of Kevin Durant because it hadn't been an impact for Durant all season long anyways when he has played with one of the other two guys. Like playing with Kyrie Irving, he's still giving you 60 fantasy points. Playing with James Harden's doing the same thing. So I'm not really worried about it. He's $9,800 on DraftKings tonight. Just an absolute great price. And then again, on FanDuel, he's 10-7. I still like it. I still think it's really good. It's Kevin Durant, and if something happens where Harden is limited tonight or gets hurt, I mean,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, right? But just even if those guys don't play, like Durant on the floor by himself is just like a whole other animal as well. So 100% with you there. Kevin Durant is my top play there at small forward.
Yep. James Granda, who's, by the way, on the playbook, I'd be remiss if I didn't say who was writing the playbook that you can read along on fantasyalarm.com, the DFS NBA playbook. James does have Bogdan Bogdanovic, and this is someone that I couldn't stand for DFS for a while, but now because Utah's still in the situation that they're in, his shot floor is safe as hell, and it's a good price point and a very solid matchup for Bogdanovic.
Listen, he's been shooting out of his mind lately. Which I think is mattered the most. He scored 20 plus now in 9 of 10 games. And he's got a 30% usage rate when Conley and Mitchell are off the floor. And what are we talking about, Vince? We're looking for the players who benefit when other guys aren't playing. Key guys like Mitchell and Conley, our minds initially go right to Jordan Clarkson. And then Bojan's been there, but the most consistent player since they all come off the floor. So I'm buying in with Bojan. And the fact that he's still under $7,000 is mind-boggling to me. Get him in there, especially on DraftKings. You get the 3-point bonus. I think, again, he's another core play for me in GPPs.
Yep, and that builds the bridge perfectly to another player that is going to take advantage because of all the other injuries and all the players that are going to be out. And this is very interesting because Boston needs this game. That's the thing. They're trying to avoid the play-in tournament, and they need this game, and they've got a lot of guys out. Jayson Tatum at 95, 94, I had to put him in the 5. It was a no-brainer. And I got to tell you this, power forward is hard as hell tonight.
Yeah, I mean, these are the games that we look for Tatum, right? When there's no Brown, when there's no Walker. And again, I understand Evan Fournier is there now, but Tatum with those guys off the floor this year, 35% usage rate, almost 1.3 fantasy points per minute. It's a great matchup against Cleveland. Like, who's guarding Jayson Tatum? Is it Kevin Love, Cedi Osman? Like, who's the guy, right? Like, Tatum is going to have no problem here in this matchup. The offense is going to feed right to him. He's probably going to take like 25 shots, in this game. And if we're looking at the projected draft forecast tonight, Vinci, they agree with us. They think he's going to be one of the highest drafted players, highest rostered players on tonight's slate.
Too easy. It's too easy. He's my top play. That's who it's been. I mean, him and Westbrook. You can get them both. We've spent more time talking about players under 6K than we have expensive players tonight. You can get – tonight's a night. It's a slate where you can get both Tatum and Westbrook in your lineups. You just got to go after that value, especially on Houston that we talked about. Someone like a KJ Martin. He has the pedigree there in Pemba, but now no Anthony Davis shadowing him. It'd be even better, as Grande notes in the playbook, if Christian Wood is ruled out. But if you're looking for maybe another option, I like Martin a hell of a lot more now that I know AD is out.
Yeah, I've been playing him almost every night since whatever slate that they're on. He's just been so productive. It's hard to ignore. We had a stretch of 3 games of 20 plus actual points. He gets to the glass, which I know that you love, Fancy. You love those wings that rebound. But he's also filling up the stat sheet as a whole, and he's shooting from the outside really well. 5 straight games now of at least 50% from three. Not always chucking out there, but he has had a game where he hit 6 threes just a couple nights ago against Milwaukee. So, if he needs to stretch the floor, he can. He's aggressive on the glass. He's one of their primary scorers right now. Again, not counting the last game against Portland, he went on a run of 17, 21, and 19 shot attempts. So, I have no problem getting him in there. The minutes are all near 40, because they're so limited in guys that are available. He's, again, a very safe play tonight. I think he's an all-format play. I'm not scared off by that situation at all. And the price is still, to me, under $7K tonight over on DraftKings is a hard one to beat.
Yep, let's talk about the Pelicans for a second because, as I've mentioned, they have a lot of guys out. We already know no Zion and Ingram, no Lonzo Ball as well, and no Steven Adams too. So a lot of their heavy hitters out. We know the situation at center. We know that Hayes and Hernan Gomez are going to split for the most part, and both of them, by the way, can produce. However, they need some help in the other positions. So where do you look overall? Do you look at someone like a Kyra Lewis? Do you look at an NAW? Do you think that maybe he has a shot at playing 30 tonight? He hasn't yet since he's come back from injury, but is that where you look? Or do you look with someone seasoned like James Johnson, who's perfectly capable of bringing up the rock as well?
I'm probably more in on the guard play, especially since they're so limited there tonight, Fancy, and we've seen just some high upside production out of them. So to me, that kind of stands out a little bit more. But if you are worried about, a Kyra Lewis or a NAW, Eric Bledsoe has been phenomenal lately.
Yes.
I think Bledsoe is maybe the safest option of the group, and he's still very affordable if you want to go in that direction. Obviously, the value plays like Kyra Lewis is going to jump out, at 4,100 on FanDuel tonight. And then, as we mentioned, we saw earlier this year, when everybody was out, Nickeil Alexander-Walker put up, really solid production. And he's played 21 and 24 minutes since coming back and giving you 23 and 31 fantasy points. He is more expensive than Eric Bledsoe on FanDuel. I kind of like just taking Bledsoe's price point as sort of the value there.
It's safe. You know what you're going to get.
Yeah. So, if you want that GBP play, go NAW or Kyra Lewis. If you're playing cash games tonight, you're probably going Eric Bledsoe.
Let's talk about the center position because a play that I put in the starting five just got a whole lot better. I liked Andre Drummond before this matchup. Hobbled front court, can't really size up against him anyway. Me thinking, and I said this in the five at the time, that LeBron was going to be back, so it was going to be give and goes to him all day with the hobbled AD. I was starting to like that situation. But now, no LeBron, okay, but no AD going up against Houston. I don't care if Christian Wood plays or not. This guy's going to smash. 5,400 Andre Drummond on FanDuel, 5,400 and 6K on DraftKings. How do we go another option?
There's really no reason not to play him tonight, sort of given just hit my camera there. Just given the situation that we got going on in LA. Yeah, I agree with you. As long as he can stay on the floor, this should be a smash spot from. Now, we've said this before. Before AD and LeBron came back, we were expecting all these big production, from Drummond, and we were never getting it because he wasn't really playing enough. And then all of a sudden, he plays a boatload of minutes the other day and dominates. I think a lot of people are going to be attracted to the price, the matchup, everything about this says Andre Drummond's going to smash. So I'm with you there. I think it makes a lot of sense given the number, the usage we should be expecting out of him here. I think Drummond's going to be the top drafted center on tonight's slate. There's still other options that I do like, though. Listen, I like Kelly Olynyk a lot tonight now, knowing no AD is going to be there. I'm not really worried about the matchup with Drummond. Drummond's not going to follow him out to the perimeter. And Olynyk's a top price center on the slate. Even if Wood comes back, I think that's fine. We saw Olynyk play really well next to Wood anyway. So, for me, spinning up for Olynyk is fine. And then, Willie Hernangomez, being
You're
very
still
productive
cool
with Steven
him
Adams
at that
out.
price point, being that we have Drummond right there. I was about to ask you.
I think it's a pivot play. I don't. If you're because we know how much the ownership is going to be on Drummond here, I think you could pivot off to the Hernan Goat and potentially get a similar level of production, because until the other night we hadn't seen that type of numbers from Drummond before, so we don't really know what we're going to get. So there's still some risk potentially with Drummond. I still think he'd be my top guy, but if you're just talking about other options, like that's a play here.
Again, I liked him before the situation, thinking LeBron was coming back. But we saw what happens when you put him up against the weak front court last night against the Knicks, even with AD there. Now no AD for Drummond. So backed right into a nice option there at such a cheap price tag. You could give John and Pemba a follow on Twitter at jmpemba777. You could give me a follow at Fensty Sports. James Grande, who wrote the playbook, you can follow him on Twitter at _real_grande. It's going to be updated. Still waiting on some injury news, but for now, 6 games to dominate. Let's do it. Let's win.